Hey folks, it's Sam, and I'm here today talking about Mahashivaratri and the astrology behind Mahashivaratri and the Kumbh Mela. Those of you who know Indian, energetics and um, Indian holidays and whatnot will um, really like to hear this. Or if you like Lord Shiva and all this spiritual power of this time of the year, you'll also really enjoy this. We're going to be talking about different things like the 14th tithi of Krishna Paksha, either in the month of Magha or Falguna. We're going to be talking about Jupiter in Aquarius and Jupiter in the fixed signs, which are other types of Kumbh Melas or other kinds of Melas, I should say. And so this is very interesting, and it really shows the true nature of the portals that get activated. And so this will be very enjoyable for me. And, we'll be looking at the astrology charts here, and, going over and analyzing all of the sacred energy. Before I get into it, though, I do want to just do a little commercial here. Please like and subscribe and share if you like this type of teaching. Subscribe to the channel, ring the bell to get notified. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube especially, and also leave a comment. Let me know what you think of this, especially if it's nice and complimentary. And do that, because oftentimes the only people that leave comments are the ones who want to complain and argue. So if you like it, leave a comment too and say, hey, this was great, thanks. And share it with others. This is the kind of stuff that we need to be doing in this world. If you want to pay it forward and make a difference, share this kind of stuff with your friends and with people on your social media and whatnot. Let them know that you think this stuff is valuable instead of just other stuff that's, full of drama or whatnot. So also, again, if you're watching on Facebook or Twitter or any place, also, please do the same. And so, again, I'm really looking forward to this. And, just a full confession here, I'm a Shaivite. Lord Shiva is my guy. Ever since I started meditating back in the 80s, it was Lord Shiva. You can see my book, Yoga and Vedic Astrology. Look who's on the front. That's Lord Shiva, Mahadeva. You see him sitting there meditating with his eyes closed in that posture. He's got the three gunas under control with his trishul, with the trident, you might say. That's what how we refer to it in the West. That refers to the three gunas on the same pole, right? He's got the drum of creation in one hand. He's got the full moon, or he's got that crescent moon on his forehead. And that crescent moon is the same kind of moon. It's to symbolize this moon of Shivaratri, because if you were to be able to see the moon, it's actually the 13th and the 14th tithi. This is when we have Shivaratri, when we have Mahashivaratri. The moon pretty much disappears, but if you were to be able to see the moon on Shivaratri, it would look like it is on his head up here. It would be a very slim crescent moon. Sometimes you can see it if it's right at the beginning of Krishna Paksha 14, but usually it's too close to the sun. But it's to symbolize that the emotional mind has been absorbed in the power and the oneness of the consciousness, because the sun itself represents pure consciousness beyond form, beyond emotions, beyond desires, beyond this world. And that's what Shiva represents. Shiva is that God who is transcendent. You see, he's sitting there by himself, meditating. Often Shiva is portrayed, he has a family. There's the Shiva, the family man. He's also talked about sometime, with his wife Durga and Parvati and his kids. But there's also Shiva, the man on the mountain, like this guy, who doesn't need the world. He's up in the Himalayas by himself, meditating. He doesn't want his meditation disturbed. He's totally absorbed in the oneness of consciousness itself. So that's who Shiva is. And again, this holiday of Mahashivaratri is the holiday when our mind is most conducive to understanding and feeling and resonating with that frequency and that vibration, right? So again, I'm going to explain why and talk about that. It's part of, in fact, I actually even did a course at the beginning or at the end of last year where I talked about these sacred holidays and celebrations and things like that. You know, the astrology of celebrations and of those sacred celebrations, and it was very, very fun to teach and to and to talk about those things, especially these Indian celebrations and these Indian holidays. And so I'm going to be touching on quite a few of those things in the upcoming course that I'm doing. Here you can see on Saturday, March 5th, even the first session of my upcoming course on Begin, Reset, and Restore Your Astrology Practice, which is upcoming March 5th and 6th and March 12th and 13th with 4 of my excellent co-teachers. The very first session is going to be on astronomy, cosmology, the spiritual zodiac, and calendar. And I'm going to be joined by Dr. Malini Iyer, who is going to be talking about those very things as well. And a certain amount of it is going to be on the sacred calendar and the holidays and how those sacred holidays like Maha Shivaratri really represents or is really showing the divine portals of energy and the sacred vibration here on Earth. By the way, I'm recording this here on February 2nd, 2022, and I see everybody all fired up about 222222. It's a portal, the sacred portal, the portal. And it's fine. I kind of watch it, and it's cool that people get excited about this stuff. But again, it's very arbitrary Gregorian calendar dates. It's arbitrary, first of all, that it's the 22nd day of this year. If January would have 30 days, it would be the 23rd today. Of course, the 22nd would have been yesterday, so we would have still had it, but then yesterday would have been the sacred portal or whatever. So again, not to throw water on everybody's portal energy, but I'm kind of doing that. Rather than get fired up about something like that, what the Indian holidays are about is we get fired up around things like this that are based on actual cosmology. Like, for example, this is a real portal, a very, very powerful portal when the sun and the moon are at this vibration. When the sun is at this point in its orbit, it happens around this time of the year, where our mind it's most conducive for our mind at this particular time, this particular day, is a literal portal that's been celebrated for, maybe tens of thousands of years, at least thousands of years. And it's not based on a Gregorian calendar date, March 1st. It's based on the time when the angle between the sun and the moon is at this angle, the 13th and the 14th tithi of waning moon, when the sun is in usually this astrology sign, usually it's in Aquarius, Rashi, where it's either the month of Magha or Falguna, based on how you delineate the calendar. But this is the moment, this is the time, and this is the night to worship Lord Shiva. Where not just because let's do it now because it'll be fun. This is a good time, as good as any. No, it's because that astrology brings into consciousness the Shiva energy more than any other time. So again, that's what we're going to analyze in greater detail, but I want you to understand these are the real portals. These are the real portals to get excited about, frankly, not arbitrary Gregorian calendar dates. And by the way, I'm not trying to knock it, because if people get excited about life on Earth and a portal, then fine, for whatever excuse or for whatever reason. But again, arbitrary numerology based on the Gregorian calendar is just what it is. And so this March 1st, 2022 is not just some arbitrary time. It's when the sun and moon line up in a particular way. And this year, it's not only lined up in a particular way, but look, it's right next to Jupiter. And this is what makes for the Kumbh Mela. Kumbh means, it's the Sanskrit word for Aquarius, which is the sign of which is and it happens when Jupiter is in Aquarius. That's called the Maha Kumbh Mela. That's called, or just the Kumbh Mela. There are other melas, which anytime Jupiter is in these fixed signs, we have different melas. Like, we have it when it's in, especially when it's in Leo. We also have the Ardha Kumbh Mela, which is the half Kumbh Mela when it's over here. But this is the big one. Every 12 years in Haridwar, this is where all of the pilgrims go and take a sacred bath in the Ganges rivers. These are a lot of these are either just Indian spiritual aspirants, people aspiring to higher consciousness. Many of them are also what are called Naga Brahmins, or like sort of like, these are monks who are like naked. They have the long dreadlocks. Look up Kumbh Mela. This is a sort of picture of it, but it's very sacred, especially for those in that Agora tradition, or those who have taken themselves out of society, like Lord Shiva. Like I just explained who Lord Shiva is. Shiva is the guy who is outside of society. He's not married with a family necessarily. There's one aspect of Shiva as a householder, but this essence of Shiva, just as this entity that is on the mountain, meditating, not of this world, is celebrated on Maha Shivaratri and on the Kumbh Mela. Again, you see all of these pilgrims here, and all of the ascetics who have left society and live like in Varanasi or live outside of society, and have these practices that are not part of the social order, or it's its own social order. They also, this is the big time for them every 12 years to go to Haridwar and take a dip, and particularly on Mahashivaratri. So this is why I'm talking about it. This particular day, this March 1st, 2022, on this is going to be powerful, not only because it's Shivaratri, but it's Mahashivaratri on the Kumbh Mela, while they're having the Kumbh Mela as well. And so, again, it's every 12 years because Jupiter takes 12 years to go around the zodiac, right? So 6 years ago, they had the Mela. It was Leo, the sun was in Leo, and it's often called the Magha Mela, where it's a nakshatra of Magha, but it's not always in nakshatra of Magha. But when Jupiter goes into the nakshatra of Magha, that's when they would do the Mela at that time, if I'm not mistaken. But at that time as well, like if this were 6 years ago, they would have been doing the Mela. It's a smaller one, but then on Shivaratri, it would have been a huge time, because Shivaratri is that time of celebrating. And by the way, Shivaratri happens every month when it's Krishna Chaturdashi. This is the phase angle between the sun and the moon. So last month, for example, when sorry, one second. Last month, when the we go back 30 days, if I go back a month, so last month it would have been on this day. Oh yeah, here it is, Krishna Chaturdashi. This was on January 30th. This was also Shivaratri. This is also called Shivaratri. That's what this tithi is called. And again, this is real. These are real portals. In fact, every day is a portal based on these things I'm showing you here. Every day is an actual portal. Again, this is why when I look at things like this arbitrary, Gregorian calendar dates, again, I'm glad people get excited about something like that, but it's based on nothing except arbitrary numbering of arbitrary years. Again, it's 2022 because that's supposedly the year Jesus was born. Okay. I say supposedly because I'm sorry, I don't know if that's true. I doubt it is. So again, that's the only reason it's 2022. But again, these things aren't arbitrary. Every month we have a portal that opens up on Krishna 14, which is Krishna Paksha, the waning half of the moon, and the 14th tithi. Every month is a portal to worship Lord Shiva. That's the day every month to really connect to Lord Shiva, when your mind and your consciousness is most like this, where you can most withdraw your consciousness inside, withdraw from the world, and be that and feel that mastery over the mind and emotions. That's what Shiva's form here is meant to illustrate. Mastery over the mind and emotions, because the mind and emotions are almost totally negated. You see, because the moon is it's a sliver of the moon, and Shiva is totally still, and he's got the three gunas under control by holding the staff with the three spokes, and he's playing the drum of creation, and he's totally peaceful and totally still. And his eyes are open, but they're not open really wide. They're in the meditative posture. So this is the form that corresponds with this day every month. Again, this was a month ago. This is just called Shivaratri. Shivaratri, right? Then we go a month further, and this one is called Maha Shivaratri, which is, go back a day. This one is called Maha Shivaratri. Maha means great. So this is the great Shivaratri, the great night of Lord Shiva. We have Shivaratri every month, but this is the great night where we celebrate it this year. This particular Shivaratri, this particular Krishna 14 is the one that is exalted beyond all the others. This is the one that really, of all other K14s, this is the one where the energy is the most powerful. So, by the way, all Indian holidays are based on this. They're all based on the tithi, is what it's called. The angle between the sun and the moon. For example, we have Purnima, or full moon, every month. Every month we have a full moon. But the big full moon to worship the guru, the big one that when we can really get the nature of the guru and the guru's teachings, is called Guru Purnima. And that happens when the sun is usually in Gemini, maybe Cancer, and that full moon is usually in Sagittarius. That particular full moon each year, so again, it's usually when the full moon is in Sagittarius each year, that Purnima is called Guru Purnima. Pay attention to your gurus and teachings then, because your mind is very amenable to getting it and getting the truth of that thing. Not just, oh yeah, full moon. Oh yeah, I love my gurus. Oh yeah, it's a full moon. I'm this and that. No, this is now the full moon, which is emotions and feelings completely immersed in the love and devotion to the guru. And it totally tracks with the astrology, because it's the full moon that usually happens in Sagittarius, which is the sign of the guru. Right? So none of this is arbitrary, and these portals are always open. Every day there's a new portal. But again, we have particular ones. And again, so I just talked about how Shivaratri it happens every Krishna 14, which means every month when the moon is dark, right before the new moon, which is called Amavasya, the tithi before the new moon is the time when we can really get that nature of Shiva. And then the next day, the Amavasya, or the new moon, is when we're now supposed to even shed that. Because Shiva gives us the awareness of, yes, I'm Shiva consciousness. That's in me to negate the emotions and all that. And then the next day, Amavasya, the new moon, wipes it all away. So now I abide in pure consciousness without even the need for the Shiva symbol. Now I am Shiva. Right? So again, these are happening all the time. Then it becomes the first tithi, and then the moon starts waxing again, and then it's a new cycle of creation. Right? Then we have Pratipad, Dvitya, and then it goes on. This is always happening, and it's always happening in this within this relationship. So that's why I say these are actual portals that are open all the time. And this is what people who live in alignment with these spiritual practices and principles do all the time. They don't wait for the Gregorian calendar to show us something that, oh, look at this. It's every day. It's like, okay, it's this nakshatra, it's this tithi, this planet is here, this is that, this is the portal today. This is why they visit that, and it's this here, this samvatsara and everything else. So this sacred divine timing is always going on. So I'm just saying this, and again, and it's not to be mean to people that are into the 222 portal or whatever it might be. It's fine that people are paying attention to it, but don't just now, but look and understand that there are actual portals that are based on real stuff all the time. And that's the basis of it. And we're meant to know that. That's why people study astrology. That's why they know it. And that's the origin of astrology as well, was bringing and understanding this divine energy and bringing it into form. And particularly things that are related to the Panchanga, which is what this is. Panchanga is literally just the very pure relationship between the sun and moon from where we perceive them on Earth. So again, the Mahashivaratri, as you see, I have these things laid out here. 14th tithi of Krishna Paksha. I have Jupiter, Aquarius, and fixed signs. So these are the indicators that show what the Mela is. And again, Kumbh Mela is when Jupiter is in Kumbh, which is Aquarius. And when Jupiter went into Aquarius, and then the sun, and then we start the new year. That's usually when it starts, kind of officially, or after the first new moon of the year. I don't exactly. In fact, it's not that laid out when exactly the Kumbh Mela starts. It literally kind of starts when Jupiter goes into Aquarius. But again, Jupiter poked his head into Aquarius last year. Then he went back again. Then he went forward again. So now is really the full-on Kumbh Mela, because he didn't set up in Aquarius fully until November. And this is how it is working now, is that now that he's in Aquarius, it's and he's not going to go back into Capricorn. This is where it sets up. So as we can see here, now one of the rules for the Chaturdashi as well is that when Chaturdashi, it mixes with Triadashi, that's when it happens. And actually, it might be. This is always a tricky thing, because we're all over the place with our calendar. In fact, let me just look and see when this shifts. So this is Triadashi. So here are the rules: is that it needs to be that Chaturdashi has to mix with Triadashi. So the 13th tithi. So here's the 13th tithi. I'm just going to move it forward hours. I'm just going to do it here in real time and see when does it change. Triadashi, okay, Chaturdashi, and it's a tithi at midnight. So it's probably in the U.S., on the west coast of the U.S., it's probably going to be celebrated on February 28th. So you just see, I just moved it here, and it's the tithi at midnight. Okay, so right here on the 28th, it's Krishna Triadashi at 1 p.m., 1:30, and then by the time of 2:30 on the 28th, then it moves to Chaturdashi. So that means that by midnight on the 28th, it's going to be Chaturdashi, and earlier that day it would have mixed with Triadashi. So those are the requirements. So probably in the West, it should be on February 28th. Okay. So pardon me for earlier saying it's March 1st. That's when you look online, it says March 1st, but then that's in India, because this will be March 1st in India. So these are the rules as it's laid out. So probably temples that you see in the U.S. should be, and by the way, then you'll see that they don't do it right because they don't get the rules right. But it should be, because what it means is that it turns into Krishna Triadashi, it turns into Chaturdashi in the middle of the day on the 28th. So that means that by midnight on the 28th, that's when you look at the tithi. So by midnight, it's going to be Chaturdashi, right? But then if you keep going, the next day at sunrise, it's still going to be Chaturdashi for much of the next day. So they might do it. It turns into Amavasya at around noon. But by now, if by midnight on the 1st in the West, it's going to be Amavasya already. So the rules are that, oh, I'm sorry, you're not seeing I'm running my chart here. I've been doing this the whole time and you're not seeing it. Okay. So I'll back this up, do it again. So again, this is on the 28th. You see it's Triadashi down here, Triadashi, and then it moves to Chaturdashi right here. On the 28th, it moves by the middle of the day, it's already Chaturdashi, which is the 14th tithi. That's when you need Shivaratri. And this is the day when it mixes with Triadashi. Okay, so it's the 13th tithi mixes with the 14th. Then at midnight, if it's the 14th. So at midnight here, you see it's the 14th. So Chaturdashi. Oh yeah, so again, at midnight on the 28th. So this is when you would do it, when the 28th becomes the 1st. So this would be the night, probably. That's when it's supposed to be done here in most of the East, right? So then but then it stays Chaturdashi through the next day and then moves to Amavasya in the middle of the day. So yes, it should be the 28th, the night of February 28th. So this is how it is supposed to do. Yeah, sorry about that. I have the chart now. Sorry, folks. I was doing that. So, all right. Now you see it. So those are the rules. So again, and you can see why it's complicated, because some of the rules are very tricky, because some of the rules you cast the chart for the local time at sunrise, right? And sunrise, Chaturdashi would be on the 1st at sunrise in the local time. But the Chaturdashi tithi is done at midnight. So you take midnight and see if that tithi at midnight, if it's the 14th tithi, is it going to mix with the 15th or with the 13th? So you would have it where the tithi changes in the middle of the day from 13 to 14. So that's the way it is on the 28th, because on 28th at sunrise, it's 13. And then by the time you hit midnight, it's 14. So that's when you are supposed to do Shivaratri. So again, I say this and then temples do it wrong or other kinds of things, but these are the rules. So usually, honestly, people do it correctly. It's not that hard to do, but sometimes they don't. And especially like when it falls on is near a Friday or a Saturday, and they do it on Saturday night because there's more people. So all of that, but this is when the portal opens, okay? Sorry, I didn't have the screen shown before. But I also want to go back and say that the first part of my Begin, Reset, and Restore Astrology class is going to start with all this sacred astronomy and cosmology and understanding this astronomy, because, you know, this is really where you need to understand how this stuff works. You have to understand that, again, this is where all the portals and all of even every new age idea, everything comes from the sky. All of it comes from the sky. Vedic astrology is probably the most precise, particularly measuring every day. You don't have anything like this in Western astrology. And it's not an insult, but you just don't. In Western astrology, you don't have this thing called the Panchanga, where you measure every day how much the sun and the moon have separated and what the separation angle is, what the nakshatra is, not to mention the month that it's happening. All of that is what underpins all of the spiritual energy coming into form on Earth. Whether we know it or not, that's what the astrology is really doing. And so all of these holidays and all of these, quote, portals, these are the actual portals. That's why all Indian holidays are timed to these, what are called tithis, or these lunar days. That's why you can't know exactly which calendar date it is. It's like, well, why don't you just make it a date? Because the calendar is only pinned to the Earth going around the sun. But again, that's also the reason why portals like 222, 22 aren't really saying anything. It just shows where the sun is, where the Earth is in its orbit around the sun, on that based on that arbitrary numbering system, which, I'm sorry, it's very arbitrary, based on that arbitrary year, right? Again, I'm not trying to insult people. And if people are inspired by it, that's fine. And numerology matters and all that matters. That's fine. But it's very, arbitrary compared to this stuff, particularly when, again, there are portals all the time. Every day is a different portal. Every day. And particularly how random this one is. And watch and see how many people are fired up about Maha Shivaratri when it comes, or how many people are fired up about, Ekadashi every month, or Guru Purnima every month. Again, it's just no numbers on the calendar. Okay. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 soon. And it's a portal. So I have to laugh about it a little bit. And I'm not trying to insult people, but I'm also kind of going, come on, you get the message, but learn it a little better. Maybe that's the portal. Maybe the message coming to you from the 2222 portal today is this astrologer saying, come on, this isn't the real portal. Maybe that's the portal message. I'm coming from the portal. So anyway, these portals are always there, and this is definitely one of them. And so that first module, even in the course that I'm teaching, is on the sacred astronomy. And then there are 8 sessions over 2 weekends. And so again, you can go check this out, beginningvedicastrology.com, and you get tons of bonus courses now, even just for registering. A course on how to understand each of the 12 zodiac signs based on the sun and the moon. Again, a very deep matrix to understand our vulnerability and overcompensation strategies based on where the signs of the sign of Cancer and Leo fall. And then another really mind-blowing technique called releasing the serpent, which helps you understand the lunar nodes, understand that opposition, really any oppositions. And then also a great class for those of you who do readings called Great Consultation Course. And so again, this is those are available now. And you can just go to beginningvedicastrology.com and get access to all those courses. And then the wonderful teachers that'll be helping me are also a real godsend. So again, this calendar is really the the real divine matrix that shows energy coming into form. And so with the Shivaratri, again, it happens every month at this lunar phase. This Krishna 13 becoming Krishna 14 happens 12 times a year. But when it happens at this time, usually in the month of like February, it's called Maha, or the Great Shivaratri. And this year it coincides with the Kumbh Mela. Again, Kumbh means pot, like where the water is poured out of the pot. And again, you can see the symbol of the Kumbh where fluid is poured. Like, watch and see when priests do pujas, for example. They have all these kumbhas, these pots all around them. They're always pouring water out and things like that. And so when Jupiter, who is Guru, when he goes into Kumbh, this Rashi, then we have the celebration every 12 years. This is the Maha Kumbh Mela. And you also have the half melas as well. You also have the half melas that happen, particularly this halfway one, Ardra Kumbh Mela, when it's in Leo, and especially when it goes into Magha Nakshatra. But then they also even celebrate when Jupiter goes into Taurus and in Scorpio, because these are the fixed signs. So I don't remember what those are called, but they're also just called the Mela. It might even be Vrishaba and Vrishika, because they're based on the zodiac signs, because this one is Kumbh, which is the name for Aquarius. And by the way, one more example of how absolutely definitively Vedic astrology, cosmology, culture is all sidereal based. This is all totally sidereal zodiac. So you should not be fooled by anyone saying, oh, they didn't know what they were doing and it should be tropical and that the sign should be tropical. It's just simply not true. Again, these spiritual traditions are absolutely nailed to the sidereal zodiac. where Aries and Ashwini are at the beginning. By the time you say Aries Ashwini at the beginning, then all the other nakshatras match up with all the other rashis. And when the sun, the solar ingress, the sun's ingress, or what's called Sankranti into Kumbh, really fires off the Kumbh Mela. Especially, that means that now the sun and Jupiter are both in Kumbh. So this is very powerful Kumbh Mela now, and we're getting very close to it really culminating when the sun and Jupiter are exact or close to exact, and you see they're happening close to exact right when we have Maha Shivaratri. So again, there's no there's no debating this kind of thing. Some people have ideas, but it's just simply not debatable. Just again, I make sure to point these things out quite a lot because it's so ubiquitous. It's everywhere. There's no one should question this. This is, again, obviously a perfect example. If you're using tropical zodiac, Jupiter's in tropical Pisces. Again, they don't get this stuff wrong. So again, very powerful. This kumbha, or this pot, the water being poured into the heart. This is why you also see a lot of the celebrations when the monks, they take their sacred bath, they take their bath in the sacred river Ganges. They pour the water over their own head. It's kind of like a baptism as well. Like when we're baptized in the West is a similar kind of thing. And so very sacred time. And Marlena asked a question, do you teach astrology? Rick Levine mentioned that I reach out to you for lessons. Rick is awesome. I love Rick Levine. Yeah, and I'll put it here. Oh, I forgot to put this. See, I'm usually so good with this. In fact, I'm going to do it now. I usually do this all the time. And this, I forgot to do it at the beginning, all the stuff I'm usually saying, but it's right here is that you can see. You can go to this beginningvedicastrology.com. It's the link that I already mentioned above. I forgot to say it at the beginning, but that's this course. Again, if you're a beginner, if you've been studying Western astrology, like with people like Rick, who is fantastic. And by the way, I don't look down my nose at Western astrologers, Western astrology. It's a great tradition as well. It's different. And when it's done properly, of course, which many like Rick and others do it properly, do it great with the tropical zodiac, because that system was divined and devised to be reading the sky that way. Again, there's no problem with that. And there are people who also use the sidereal sky, because frankly, the sidereal sky works well in Western astrology as well, because it originated from sidereal sky. But again, there are many techniques that adapted using the tropical zodiac that are now the main part, or a main part of Western astrology. But you have to understand, Indian astrology never adapted the tropical zodiac. It just simply doesn't. It's still practiced the way it was 2,000 years ago. We already know this. When you learn Vedic astrology, you learn from the 2,000-year-old books, right? When you learn Western astrology, you actually don't. Some people might, but it's mainly what the practice is now. Basically came from Persia and imported into Europe. That's the practice now, primarily. But if you go back and read the early Western astrology texts, they were using the sidereal zodiac. Again, it doesn't make wrong what they're doing now. It's just a fact matter. It's just a data point. It's just facts. But there's nothing in any West Vedic astrology text that says anything about tropical zodiac. Of course it wouldn't, because their entire cosmology and culture was pinned to the nakshatras, measuring space and time, and then the rashis also pinned to that. There was never any mention, confusion, or anything about tropical rashis. Times when the zodiac signs were also mentioned in conjunction with things like the zodiac and the whatnot, they weren't talking about the zodiac. They were talking about the calendar at that time. And there was a way that they spoke about them that made it seem like they were saying the zodiac was tropical. It takes 5 seconds to realize that's not what they were doing. But some people have confused that and now spread all this. But it's just simply not true. So this is very powerful. And so with this great holiday of 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 Mahashivaratri, the main thing is to get into your spiritual practices, meditation, things like that. People, there's a question here, and this is always like, what does it mean for the world? The world. Look at the world. Oh yeah, the world will be fine after this. No, I mean, the world is what it is. Honestly, in many ways, frankly, Lord Shiva is like, the world isn't the real thing. And, that might not be the politically correct thing to say, but it doesn't really mean much for the world. It means that you're not of the world. That's what it means. It means the world is the world, quote. Yeah, I mean, look at all the stuff going on. I'm not going to get into it, but the protests and the on the verge of wars and all this, there's the world. By the way, it's always been that way, hasn't it? It's always been that way your whole life. And it's not to be glib about it, because I hate that. We all hate it. But you're in the world, but not of the world. So what this means, I would think less about what it means for the world. And again, we live in this idea that everything is about some utopic thing for the world that's going to happen. Now, how's that working out for us? Doesn't seem to be working out too well these days. Doesn't mean we can't try or we shouldn't try. This is a great night of Lord Shiva that I already explained. It's about the meditation practices. It's about connecting to the true self. That's what the celebration is. These monks aren't here, these pilgrims aren't here in the Ganges because they're thinking it's going to help the world. Now, again, it doesn't mean it doesn't help the world. I mean, what would the world be like if there weren't people doing all of these spiritual practices? I hate to think about it. I'd hate to think about what it would be like if there weren't people doing these pujas for the world. And these things are happening all the time, by the way, whether you know it or not. So, Eddie, your question, again, it's not to be glib about it. It doesn't mean it has nothing to do with it, but you are the world. We are all the world. And any intentions that you bring into your authentic spiritual practices that you want to benefit the world, you can do. But again, we tend to look at something external first, when we don't look at what's really the most important part of everything, which is who we are. We can hardly change anything without first becoming our fully developed self. And this holiday here, Mahashivaratri, is really the time to know yourself beyond the world. Know yourself beyond all of the things that distract and agitate and make you sad and all of that stuff about the world, because you are beyond that. Your true nature is beyond that. So again, rather than have it be another thing to make us, oh, the world, what's going on? We do that enough. 99.99% of our life is, but the world, this. And we do that because we don't know who we really are. And so we think we're this person in the world. That's who we are. And we're not. It's very simple. You're not that person. That's a part of you. You have a physical body and physical karma with this world, and it's going to be dead one day. And probably 100 years, nobody would have cared. I know it's a terrible thing to say, to hear, and it's true. How many people live and die, and our life is so important to us right now, and the world's so important, we're so important. Everybody's so important, our kids, our family, everybody's so important, and none of it really matters ultimately. But yet it matters entirely, because you're God's consciousness in this form, and here to reclaim that and actually know that, to know that in fullness. And we're supposed to know that in fullness all the time. We're supposed to be doing these practices all the time. Literally, we're supposed to be meditating and doing this all the time, at least for a while each day. We're supposed to be sitting totally still with the mind under control, with the gunas under control, not because we're terrified, but because we've mastered them. That's supposed to be our nature all the time. This is our nature. Your nature is as Shiva. You are Shiva. It's not a god to worship out there in the cosmos or a guru in the world. It's you. It's your nature. So if your nature was unperturbed by whatever is going on, that's going to be, your salvation rests upon that. One might say it's the only thing that matters. It's the only thing you're really looking for. Because the world's going to be the world, but if the world disturbs you and allows you to not know yourself, then the world has won and your soul has lost, your spirit has lost. And this, again, especially the form of these deities and whatnot, those forms are not arbitrary. And when you meditate, especially on like a night like Maha Shivaratri, and you should want to take this form of stillness, the mind under control, the mind peaceful and calm and still. And there's all kinds of stories about Shiva, all of the stories that are told on Shivaratri while you're doing the meditations are there to awaken that power in you. That's your nature. Where he drank the poison, and so they pour the fluids on the Shiva lingam because Shiva drank the poison to save all of existence, which was about to be destroyed. But he's got a fever in his throat. He held the poison in his throat. His wife held the poison in his throat. So they're pouring the liquid on the Shiva lingam to cool him down, to cool down the mind. Again, this is a metaphor for us and how we keep being contaminated by the poison of the world, and we're so stressed. So we need to cool our mind down, cool our heads down, be calm, be cool. Nothing external is causing anything in you. We don't think that, but it's true. And it's especially true to those who have awakened that true nature. They realize, okay, yes, the world is terrible and it feels bad, but it's what it is. It's always been that way. And I'm not that. I'm not this frightened animal. So that's what I would say. And it's a good question. And again, I'm not trying to be glib about it, but again, this is your nature. And of all the times of the year, all the nights of the year, all of the portals, this one is the portal that awakens Shiva energy. So look and see who Shiva is, and you'll see it's not about the world. And by the way, if I were to be glib about any holiday, it would be Shivaratri, because Shiva is always the one who is kind of screwing it up reality on some level. Not reality, but the world. Because what he does is, Shiva is like the wild man anarchist. Because what happens is these Asuras, I don't like to use the word demons, but that's kind of the word that Christianity would say, but they're called Asuras, which are these beings, by the way, they're part of your mind, who wants to control the world and take over the world and get all the money and get all the stuff and rule over the earth. These Asuras wind up doing all of this spiritual penance to Lord Shiva, because they know Shiva will give them a boon, whether they're virtuous or righteous or holy or not. Shiva doesn't care. If you do the practices, you get the power, you get the boon. Shiva gives you the boon. So particularly in a text called the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's filled with nothing but, it's mostly these Asuras who did all this penance, did all these powerful, what's called tapas, to Lord Shiva, because they know Shiva would give them the boon, and then they take that boon and try to take over the world. And they're about to do it. And then Vishnu takes another form and saves the world from Shiva's, from this being that wound up getting powerful because Shiva gave him the boon. So why does Shiva keep doing that? Again, this is a metaphor for your own life as well. That's who Shiva is. And by the way, it's the same metaphor that why do you think the people in power are so corrupted? It's very much like what Shiva does. You want to go through all that suffering and penance and power and torture, then you wind up getting the power that comes with it. And it's the power to like fight more ruthlessly than your enemies and whatnot. This is why the people in power, most of them are so corrupted and so repulsive. And the world is run by that kind of energy. And you're run by that kind of energy. What would you do if someone gave you as much power as some of these people have? Oh, you say you wouldn't do it, but I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I think you'd be the vortex of cancel culture. You'd cancel everybody who didn't agree with you. I know you would. Wouldn't you? I would. No, I wouldn't. I'm just kidding. But we sit back and look at all the stuff that triggers us now. But again, that's why they say power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Shiva's where all that power is. And the battlefield within that's happening with Shiva is these parts of your mind that are at war with each other. These and to calm them down and to chill out about them and not be triggered and engaged and battling and fighting and stuff like that. So these are all very much about Shiva's, all the stories that surround Shiva, at least a lot of them do. But it's also because Shiva doesn't deny anyone. He knows that, in fact, many of his greatest devotees were criminals or thieves or whatnot. And then after they exhausted that karma, they became pure. They became purified. They became, saints after they were a thief or a murderer or a beggar or something. Shiva denies no one. So again, it's a very powerful, beautiful energy. This wasn't meant to, I'm not going to, I could talk about Shiva all day, but I mainly wanted to do this as a case study in the real portals, because we have this big portal today that everybody's talking about. And we're right on the verge of huge portals coming up, particularly with Maha Shivaratri. So if you thought the 222 portal was a big deal, really gear up for this Maha Shivaratri that's coming. And, again, as it relates to things in our life, what I'm talking about with getting attached and things like that, we all do. And the world is terrible. So many things now that so much triggering and so many things on the verge. And those are the times when the most transformation is possible, really. So this could be very powerful time, very ripe with, Saturn and Capricorn, all kinds of stuff, exalted Mars. So this isn't an analysis of that chart. I will do that at some point, but this is more of the astrology and astronomy and cosmology behind those things. And also, again, if you want to learn more about how these things work, go to that website, beginningvedicastrology.com. I'll put the link there again. Again, you register now, you get tons of free classes. And then the 2 weekends, I just lay out all of Vedic astrology. Like you see it from the very beginning, from the zodiac, how it's laid out, the sense behind it, the cosmology behind it, how it turns into these holidays and things like that. Then you learn about those spiritual principles of what's called Sankhya philosophy, the elements, the gunas, the different structures of Purusharthas. These are the Indian energetic models that are also functioning in yoga, things like chakras, why mantras work, all of those spiritual principles that come down from the cosmos into these living sciences of India. Then we get into planets and signs and how the planets as the forces and as the gods or the deities energize the signs, which are like the psychological structure. And then once you have a chart, they become the houses. And we have this very intelligent design and the structure of how to read astrology, starting from those very spiritual principles down to more granular things. Then we get into things like the nodes, nakshatras, other kinds of deeper Indian constructs. Then we get into making predictions and things like that. So this is what I will go over in 2 weekends. You'll see the whole thing like laid out for you very sensibly. And again, this is also a companion to my full-on certification course that I teach. And I'm doing this frankly because a lot of people, they've often said they want to get the certification course, but it looks like a big commitment, like, oh, that's a lot. You'll see the system laid out, whether you get the certification course or not or whatever. You'll see that intelligent structure laid out. And for the many students that have studied with me over the years that maybe have gotten a few classes, but again, they haven't plugged into the full system, and even some who have gone through the full system, like the certification course, this is a great review to go back and look at it all again. I'm teaching a lot of new frameworks and new ways to organize the information, which is always what I do. That's my work, is to go deeper into these things and add add more nuance as I go. So again, check that out. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this case study on Mahashivaratri and Kumbh Mela and the sacred divine timing of India. And again, this winds up showing every month we have this portal of the 14th lunar day of the waning moon is always a Shivaratri, where our mind can really get that quality of Shiva right before the new moon, where then the mind gets totally wiped away and negated. And that's the tithi, or the lunar day of liberation, right? And then also the things with the Kumbh Mela. Kumbh literally means Aquarius. Jupiter in Aquarius every 12 years is when pilgrims go, the most holy time. And again, now the most holy time where they worship Shiva is corresponding with Shivaratri. So this particular Kumbh Mela is once every 12 years, right? And it's going to be really powerful as well, because we also have exalted Mars. We have Saturn in Capricorn. These things don't line up all the time. In fact, I'm going to go back and do a case study to see how often, but Saturn hasn't been in Capricorn or over here for 28, 29, 30 years. So I would imagine the last time we had Kumbh Mela with Saturn in Capricorn was a long time ago. I'll go back and look, probably 60 years ago, because Jupiter, Saturn run in 60-year cycles. So I'll do a deeper case study, but these things are very powerful, and I hope you also enjoyed that. So again, last thing, go ahead and please like, subscribe, and share this with others if it was helpful for you. And I certainly appreciate it. Leave a comment if you want to also share something. So thanks a lot.